I mean, how can you talk that much rubbish about a car? Absolute BS. Literally taking the schmeichel. Anyway. So, ignore the BS and buy a Porsche Taycan. Welcome back to TCR TV, and today you join me with the Porsche Taycan Sport Turismo. And the reason this video is being made is I want to talk about the depreciation of the Taycan and why it depreciates so much, because there's a lot of videos flying around online giving this car extremely bad press when it doesn't deserve it. And to put it quite frankly, it shouldn't be a shock to anybody that a new car, albeit a Porsche, depreciates. Now don't get me wrong, these are depreciating in mad numbers, but I'm just going to run through my thoughts on why I think that is happening. And to be fair, they're quite reasonable outcomes and quite reasonable thoughts as to why this seems to be a problem with the Taycan, and not just the Taycan, other electric cars. Before this video continues, I do just want to say this is a fantastic car. Now, just because it depreciates, you shouldn't even discredit it. It is a great car, it drives very nice, it's great for long journeys, and despite what the Map Master says, the EV network certainly isn't as bad as he makes out. I've done 1,000 miles in this car in roughly 4 days. I've done quite a few long road trips, and every charger I've been to has been absolutely fine. I've been able to charge at 150 kilowatt hours and above plus, and nursing this car at 70 miles per hour on the motorway, I've actually managed to get around 250 to 260 miles out of a full charge when the battery was on 100%. Now, to address the elephant in the room and address the depreciation values of these cars, yes, it is quite ludicrous. This particular model, the Sport Turismo, starts at around £80,000, but this particular car that I'm in is £90,000 because it has around 10 grand's worth of options on it. Which brings me on to my first point. When you buy a Porsche, Porsche's business model for years has been give people a great car and let them customize it with the nice touchy-feelies and the added necessities when they want them for a premium price. And they've never shied away from that. So that is my first point. This car, you can quite easily spec it up to 130 grand, but to keep numbers even and make it easier to work out, I'm gonna say this car was 80 grand and we've put £20,000 worth of options on it. If you was to buy this car for 100 grand and sign your name on the dotted line, the first thing that would happen the second you drive it off the forecourt is you would lose the VAT. And if you're watching this in another country, VAT in the UK is value added tax, and the irony being called value added tax, I really don't understand it, because it simply just takes money out of the consumer's pocket. So this car is 100 grand. It's 80 grand with 20 grand's worth of options. You've signed it, you've bought it. The second you drive it off the forecourt, you've lost that 20% VAT, which is 20 grand. So there's £20,000 depreciation in the first year. Then you've also had £20,000 worth of options on it. Now don't forget, options don't always add value to cars, and you can see this a mile off when you start speccing a car up on lease deals, because you pay the full value of the option over the duration of the lease deal divided into your monthly payments. And the lease companies do this because they know options just do not add any money onto the car. They might add a little bit, but certainly not a lot. So straight away, if you've lost your 20 grand in options and you've lost your 20 grand in VAT, I hate to say it, your car's worth 60 grand after the first year, regardless of how many miles it's done. Now that might come as a shock, but it isn't a shock, because nobody in the right mind buys a new car thinking it will hold its value and not depreciate a single penny. Now don't get me wrong, 40 grand in 12 months is a lot of money to lose on a car, but you need to look at the positives. Why are people not buying used electronic cars or Porsche Taycans? Well, to put it quite simple, you're all snobs. You've all bought into the mentality that these battery cars are disposable cars because of everything that's been said online, especially like what the Map Master said. Now, they're not disposable because most electric car companies will offer an 8-year warranty on their batteries and motor, and they will also state that over 8 years the batteries will only deplete 5%. So they're really not a throwaway car, but people tend to think they are because technology moves fast and it moves forward. Thus meaning people go, oh, I won't buy an electric car second hand because it won't charge up the same. Well, it's utter rubbish. It will charge up the same, it'll function the same, but when it gets to about 10, 12 years old, maybe the batteries won't charge up to give you that 250 mile range which you was first getting. You might only be getting 230 miles. But let's face it, are EVs good cars? Yes, they are. A lot of people don't like them because they're pure, thorough petrol heads like myself, but the way they drive and the acceleration they have is second to none, because you can't do this in a petrol car. The power does not get delivered the same way it does in an EV. It is absolute madness how quick these cars pick up speed, and they are really fun to drive, and especially the Taycan. It looks pretty, it feels pretty, and it is a very nice car. Now, Porsches have always been an attainable dream. They've always been that sort of businessman style of sports car. He's doing well for himself, but you couldn't quite afford a Ferrari or a Lamborghini. Now, that's certainly changed over the years because the price of Porsches have absolutely gone through the roof, near enough mirroring the costs of Lamborghinis and Ferraris. Which brings me on to say is a bit disheartening, because I've always loved Porsches, and I've always thought, you know what, when I'm older, if I've got a spare 60 grand, I'll buy myself a 911. The new 911s are no way near that, but if you've got a spare 60 grand, spare 50 grand, spare 40 grand, guess what you can step into? A Porsche Taycan. So it still is an attainable dream, not in the flat six sort of way that's got a screamy, shouty engine and exhaust, but in an electric vehicle sort of way that just has absolute moronic boost like that gives you a smile and a push. So going back to the depreciation, those are two factors. You've got the VAT and you've got the options list. Now, what do I think is the third reason why these cars depreciate, or any EVs in general? Well, that is the government incentives such as salary sacrifice. What you have to look at with these salary sacrifice deals is the cost of the car. For instance, if I was to go and lease one of these Taycans from a leasing company, because the depreciation is so high on the car, that gets divided into your monthly payments, meaning you're going to have a large monthly payment for this car, let's say circa £1,000 a month. If you look at getting one of these cars on a salary sacrifice, you might well find, and don't quote me on this, you might find you can get one for around £680 a month. So what does the consumer do? Well, because of the tax benefits, and you paying that £680 a month comes off your gross pay and not your net pay, and it includes maintenance, wear and tear, tyres, and you can insure your family members on it. You're not going to go and get one for £1,000 a month, you're going to go and get one through a salary sacrifice scheme. And because these cars are so cheap to get through the salary sacrifice scheme at the moment, it means there is a shit ton of them for sale on the used market, which again drives the price down. But again, hello public, hello consumers, why are we not buying used? Everyone is on about buying new because they have this battery snobbery mentality of, oh, well, it just won't be as good as a new one. Well, that's factually incorrect. I can tell you, I get involved in driving a lot of EVs and I go to a lot of the launches with the big brands, and I'm not just saying this as some sort of sales rep, because I do have an opinion on cars, and this car is quite fantastic. And I'm actually going to stand here and defend its corner for once, because there is so much bad stuff being said about it, and it's just unjust, because it is a great car. The other thing we need to mention with the salary sacrifices as well, you often get the choice of buying the car at the end of the term. So that means the leasing company that you've got it through will go, right, Mr. Shorrock, this car's come to the end of its term. If you want to buy it, we're going to send it through the auctions for 34 grand, or you can buy it. What people then realise is, for them to go and get a £34,000 loan to buy the car, because let's face it, the UK is broke and people don't have 34 grand sat in the bank to go and throw at a car, they have to get a loan, and then they realise the interest rates are high, and a 34 grand loan over 5 years is going to cost them way over £680 a month. So what do? They go back to the salary sacrifice scheme and they get another brand new Taycan, meaning there's one sat on the forecourt of the used market for sale that doesn't shift for months. multiple people fall into the same process, hey presto, there is double the amount of cars for sale. And it shouldn't come as a surprise. It's so obvious why these cars depreciate. But people are cottoning onto it, blaming the infrastructure, blaming the government grants, and blaming the manufacturers. And it isn't their fault. Quite frankly, it's the government's fault. They want to meet net zero. They want to maintain all this ZEV legislation. So they're telling manufacturers by 2030, you've got to make battery cars. So that's the harsh reality. The manufacturers are doing it because they don't want to die. Porsche have bought into it, but you can't blame the manufacturers for it. They're actually giving you an incentive to have a half decent car. The other perk of the salary sacrifice and everything else is it's worry-free motoring. You are getting a car that you do not have to worry about, that you can own throughout its warranty period, and if anything goes wrong with it, it is not your problem. If you go and buy the car at the end of its term and it's out of its warranty period, guess whose problem it is? It's yours. So what I'm getting at with this is, don't listen to everything you hear online where people are slagging off the EV network, saying the infrastructure isn't there because it's 10 times better than what it was 5 or 6 years ago. And don't listen to what everyone's saying about EVs being a con, because the reality is the people that are slagging these cars off have probably never driven one. And I'm not saying that to be a snob, but I've lived a lot with these. I do know that the range is more than enough. Myself and my friend Jim drove a Hyundai Ioniq 6 to 5 countries in 1 day on 1 charge. And if you want to see the proof of that, click up here to watch the video. The EV infrastructure in Europe, yes, it's 10 times better than the UK, but the UK is starting to buy into that now, and it is getting there. For instance, if you're going on a long journey, you might drive for 2-3 hours and then think, right, I want to stop. So you pull into the service station, you go and park in a bay, you plug your car in, you tap your card, and then what do? You walk away, go and get a coffee, you might go to the toilet, stretch your legs, wait for your missus to buy something from the shop. By the time you come back to your car, in 20 minutes, you've gone from 20% to 80% battery. How is that inconvenient? I understand it's inconvenient when you get to a charger and they're all full, but that's slowly getting better. Touch wood, every charger I've been to in the past 2 weeks, I've never had to wait for one. I've jumped straight on it and I've been charging at a minimum of 150 kilowatts, which is rapid charging to say the least. When you buy a brand new Taycan from Porsche, they give you a charge card, a Porsche charge card. And what that does is it gives you a fixed price of rapid charging at any charger within their network on their scheme of 30 pence per kilowatt hour. The current rates are anything between 72 to 84p per kilowatt hour. So it's more than 50% off. And again, that's for 3 years. So if you get a car on salary sacrifice for 3 years and it comes to the end of its term, if you buy it, you're then going to have to start paying full whack on charge. So what does the consumer do? Goes back to Porsche, buys a brand new Taycan through the salary sacrifice scheme, gets the charge card, and has discounted charging throughout the ownership. So this is why they're depreciating, because the incentives are there at the moment to keep people buying new ones, which is ultimately flooding the market with used ones. But it shouldn't come as a shock that new cars depreciate. Classic cars appreciate, they don't always appreciate. Nothing is guaranteed. If you want something that appreciates, go and shove 100 grand into property. Don't shove it into a car. Don't shove it into any car, because there is no guarantee that that value is going to go up. Now, to summarise the Porsche Taycan, I think it is a great car. It's very nice to drive, it's very fast, very solid, and you do get a lot of head turns when you're driving it on the road. But one thing we need to focus on and take something positive from all this is, yes, the car depreciates, and it depreciates fast, which shouldn't come as a shock. But the positive is, if you're in the market at the moment and you're looking to spend between 45 and 50 grand on a EV car, and you might be looking at Volkswagens, you might be looking at Kias, you might be looking at Hyundais, or Hyundais is the correct way to pronounce it, and you're looking at that price bracket brand new, if it was me, being a petrol head, and I know that's a bit contradictory because we're talking about voltage cars, I would look at the Porsche Taycan because it is a status symbol. They are very nice cars. They do turn a lot of heads, and they are absolutely fantastic to drive, and they are extremely fast. And the positive is, if you couldn't afford a Porsche, you now can afford a Porsche due to the depreciations. And then you might get the bug, and then eventually you might think, you know what, I'm going to save up a bit, work hard, I'm going to treat myself to a 911. The Taycan is essentially a gateway car into Porsches, and the depreciation shouldn't come as a shock. There is one last thing that I want to say, and this is aimed at you, Lee. Please don't take this the wrong way. I am sure you are a very nice guy, probably very sound, and I'm more than happy to discuss these depreciation rates of the Porsche Taycan and your personal car over a beer or a coffee. But please stop spreading so much BS about the car. I understand you want views, and to get views you've got to be a little bit savvy with the clickbait, but your latest title says your Porsche Taycan has depreciated so much it's worth scrap value. Well, scrap value for cars in the UK is anything between 150 to 250 pounds. So if it is, Lee, I'm going to make you a fantastic offer. I will give you 500 pounds for your car. But me and you both know it is worth a lot more money than that. Your car is probably worth between 45 to 55,000 pounds. I don't actually know the full spec of your car, but it's probably worth around that. And Lee, if you're classing 45 to 55 grand as scrap value, then you, my friend, can afford the depreciation on a Porsche Taycan. So to wrap this up, let me know what you think in the comments. I hope this video has explained a bit more about why electric cars in the UK are depreciating so much. If you think I've missed a point, or you've got a point that you'd like to add, feel free to drop us a comment. And if you are thinking of leasing a Porsche Taycan at the moment, there'll be a link in the description and pinned as the top comment to where you can find some cracking deals on that car. And more importantly, follow me on socials, or even hit that subscribe button, because I've got a few things lined up this year. It's going to take a little while to do it, and I would like you guys to be there on the journey. So in the meantime, make sure you do everything in style, and I will see you all very soon.